I went into the attic to find a box of Christmas lights, but what I found instead has ruined every night since. Inside were newspapers stacked tight, brittle like they hadn't been touched in decades, and one headline just stopped me. Local. Boy disappears, 1976. I wasn't even looking at the headline anymore, to be honest. It was the photo underneath that punched me straight in the chest. The boy in the picture looked exactly like my son. Same messy hair, same soft smile, even the scar above his right eyebrow. I picked it up slowly, holding the paper like it might fall apart. But that face didn't change no matter how close I got. The newspaper was dated nearly 40 years before my son was even born. But that boy in the photo, it was him, I swear. I stared at it for almost an hour in total silence, just turning it over in my hands and trying to catch my breath. Eventually, I folded the page carefully, slid it into my jacket, and walked downstairs like nothing happened. But I didn't say a word. That night, when my son asked me to read him a bedtime story, I sat there staring at his face like I didn't know him. Because the truth is, I wasn't afraid of some old photo anymore. I was afraid that my son might not even be mine. I told myself it had to be a fluke. Maybe someone in my family tree, or some strange genetic overlap I didn't know about. But a few days later, while searching for old bills in the basement cabinet, I found something else I wasn't supposed to see. Stuffed between tax files and utility folders was another newspaper clipping, older than I remembered ever saving. This one from 1992. Another missing boy. Same age. Different name. But the photo made my chest tighten so hard. I thought I was having a heart attack. Same face. Same exact scar. Same shadow in the eyes. And it was printed 23 years before my son ever took his first breath. I laid both pages side by side on the kitchen counter, just staring at them under the light, like they'd start explaining themselves. My wife walked past me with laundry in her arms and asked what I was doing. I told her I was just sorting old mail. Later that night, I searched the name. Daniel Reyes, age 9, vanished walking home from school. No leads, case remains unsolved. I couldn't stop replaying it in my head. 2 missing boys, 2 decades apart, and somehow they both looked like the child I raised. And the scariest part wasn't what I saw in the pictures. It was the feeling that I'd just stepped into something I couldn't undo. Couldn't sleep anymore without hearing that missing boy's name echo in my head, like my brain was trying to tell me something important. So I searched deeper. Not Google, not news sites. I went into weird forums where people post things that make most people laugh or panic. One thread stopped me cold, buried 10 pages deep in an archive labeled Loop Cases, and it mentioned both names, Carter and Reyes. The post had no comments, no likes, just a single line that read, "Same face, different years. Don't let him. Turn 9. At the bottom was an email, and against everything logical in my body, I messaged it. I think my son is one of them. I waited the whole next day with a knot in my stomach. Didn't expect anything. Until my phone buzzed at 3:07 a.m., no name, just a number. The text said, "How old is he?" I replied, 8. He turns 9 next week. Less than a minute later, the phone rang, and the voice on the other end didn't say hello. She just said, Then we don't have much time. She told me her name was Mara, and that she lost her son in 2008. Same age, same scar, same everything. And before I could even ask how it was possible, she said 7 words that chilled every inch of me. "You're not the first. You won't be the last." Mara's voice didn't shake, but mine did, because everything she said felt like she was reading a version of my future I couldn't change. She told me her son, Elijah, started drawing the same symbol over and over, a spiral, always in red, always just before he turned 9. He would hum weird tunes he said weren't songs, whisper things in his sleep like, "They're watching," and stare at the hallway for hours. Then one night, right before his birthday, she found him standing barefoot in the yard, whispering to no one, saying he remembered now. He didn't remember her, didn't recognize his own room, and the next morning he was gone. Door locked, windows sealed, no footsteps in the grass. The cops blamed runaway behavior, said maybe he had trauma, but Mara said she felt it. Something took him, something that knew how not to leave evidence. I asked her what she thought it was. She paused for a while, then said, "It's not about who they are. It's about how long it's been happening." She believed these boys weren't just connected. They were the same. Same soul, same body, over and over, like someone kept restarting the tape. Mara said she'd tracked 4 cases like hers. 4 boys, all 9, same scar, same face, same vanishing point. And the next one lined up with my son. Then she said something I'll never forget. They don't take them at 9 because they're children. They take them at 9 because that's when they remember. 2 days after that call, I came home from work and found my son sitting cross-legged on the floor, drawing with complete focus. I looked over his shoulder expecting dinosaurs or superheroes, but it wasn't that. It was something else, something weirdly perfect and detailed. A spiral drawn again and again in thick black marker. Sharp lines, tight loops, with 4 numbers scribbled next to it in shaky handwriting. 1976, 1992, 2008. And one more beneath them, 2024. My son turns 9 in 5 days. I asked him where he saw the numbers. He didn't even look up, just said, "They've always been there. You just don't remember yet." Then he flipped the page and started sketching something else. A square room, wires on the walls, and a tall figure with no face. I asked who the person was. He said, "That's where they keep the old versions." I felt sick, like he was remembering something he'd never lived. He stared at his drawing for a long time, then calmly said, "I think this is the last time I get to be me." That night, I watched him sleep like I was guarding something ancient, something borrowed. Because suddenly, he didn't feel completely like mine anymore. I used to think you raise a child, but now I'm wondering, what if I was just hosting one? Scanned his drawing into my computer the next morning, hoping maybe I could reverse image search it or something. Anything to prove it was fiction. But after hours of nothing, I found a buried link inside an old missing persons blog. No title, no source, just a grainy black and white photo. My heart dropped. It was the same room, Same cables. Same cold white walls. Same giant panel on the back wall shaped like a spiral. The photo had a caption: Private Research Wing, Decommissioned Facility, Red Pines County. Sealed off since 1994 after a child disappearance investigation was shut down. I checked the location. It was just 2 hours from our house, tucked into the woods behind an abandoned mining site no one talks about. I didn't tell my wife. I just packed a flashlight, gloves, the printed photo, and drove out there like something was pulling me by the spine. The fence was rusted open, trees growing through it like nature wanted the place buried. But that structure was still there, hidden like it was ashamed. I found the door from the drawing. Same square frame, same keypad torn off the wall, and that feeling like I was walking into something that remembered me. Inside, it was dead silent. No graffiti, no animals, just dust, cold metal, and a quiet that made my ears ring like the walls were holding their breath. And on the back wall of that room, where my son had drawn it, was the spiral, carved deep into steel, like it had always been waiting. I went back the next day because I couldn't stop thinking about that spiral. Something about it felt less drawn and more like a door. Behind the panel, I found a hidden compartment with a photo and a folded note sealed in a plastic sleeve that smelled like dust and metal. The photo showed the same room I was standing in, but there was a boy in the shot, standing where the spiral is now. I didn't have to guess. It was my son in that picture. Only the date scrawled on the back said July 1976 in pen. The note was written by hand, words shaky like someone rushed it, and it simply read, "He remembers more each time. Don't let him spiral." I sat there frozen, rereading those words as the walls suddenly felt too narrow, and the spiral looked like it had sunk deeper into the wall. I left everything except the photo, shoved it in my pocket, and walked backward out the door like something might come crawling out behind me. Back in the car, I stared at my shaking hands and realized I didn't even know what I was protecting my son from anymore. That night, while brushing his teeth, he looked in the mirror and casually asked me, "What version am I?" Like it was a normal question. I asked what he meant, but he just smiled and said, "I think I used to be taller," then turned off the light and walked away. His birthday was 3 days away, and everything in my body told me something bad was coming. Not maybe. Definitely. He stopped sleeping through the night and started mumbling in his dreams, whispering names I didn't recognize like he was, trying to comfort someone. I asked him once if he was having bad dreams, and he just said, "They're not mine," then shrugged like that made sense. I showed him a photo of himself from last year, and he said, "That's not me," without even blinking or laughing. At dinner, he asked me if I had ever died before, then asked if I remembered the lake from the second time. I didn't want to push him, but every answer he gave felt like it came from a version of him that had lived longer than me. I texted Mara again and asked what she did the night before Elijah's birthday, and she replied instantly. I ran. I started packing bags. No plan, just instinct. Clothes, cash, ID, anything that didn't feel digital or traceable, like I was running from something with eyes. My wife thought I was losing it. Maybe I was. but I looked her in the eye and said, "He's not just a kid." She didn't believe me. She said I needed sleep, but I saw the way she flinched when he walked into the room and smiled. He asked to sleep in our bed that night, and we said yes without thinking, but I didn't sleep a second. At around 3 a.m., I opened my eyes and saw him sitting upright, staring at the ceiling like he was waiting for a sound only he could hear. I whispered his name, and he turned slowly and said, "Don't be scared if I don't remember you tomorrow." Like it was a normal thing to say. I wanted to ask what that meant, but I couldn't breathe. I just stared at him while he calmly laid back down like nothing happened. A few hours later, I woke to find him gone from the bed. I checked the whole house, every room, every lock, every window. The front door was closed, but his shoes were missing. And sitting on the kitchen table was his spiral drawing, now filled in completely black. I sprinted into the yard with bare feet and panic in my chest. And then I saw him, standing in the middle of the street barefoot. He wasn't moving, just staring at the woods, like they were calling him by name. And I swear I saw his lips moving. I grabbed him hard and pulled him back inside. He didn't fight, didn't cry, just whispered, "This version's too stubborn." That's when I realized something worse than losing him. He might already be gone, and whatever was inside him was just finishing the goodbye. The morning of his birthday felt wrong, like the air was heavier, like even the lights in the house were flickering quieter. He came to the table like nothing happened, smiled like always, and blew out his candles without making a wish. I asked what he wished for, and he said, "I didn't. That part's already done." Then walked away, humming a tune I didn't recognize. Later, I found a note in his handwriting taped to the fridge that said, "Thank you for letting me come back one more time." He didn't vanish. He didn't get taken. But by that night, he wasn't the same. Like someone pressed reset, and he rebooted with a smile. He forgot our dog's name, forgot where we keep the cereal, called me Sir instead of Dad, just once, but it was enough. When I tucked him in, he looked at me and asked, "Did I do better this time?" Like he was grading his own life. I nodded, said, "Yeah, you did," and he smiled like it was the only thing he'd been waiting to hear across every version of himself. He fell asleep, holding my hand, breathing steady, and I sat there next to him wondering how many more fathers had watched this happen. Because now I know the truth. He's not mine. He never was. But this version, this one, was loved.